going to show you today how to make gluten-free beef stew. I'm going to go through my list of ingredients with you so that you know exactly what I'm using and what's going in. First, we're going to start with 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to use Becel. And then it's 2 pounds of carrots and 6 stalks of celery, fresh celery, and 2 onions. And then we are going to add dried thyme, rosemary, salt, and pepper. So these are just dried spices that I have on hand in my kitchen. There, we're ready to start making our stew. So I've got my butter all nice and hot in my pan. I put my stove on fairly high, almost to boiling, but not quite. And we're going to add our onions and our celery and our carrots to the pot to saute them to get them nice and soft. So I'm going to start with the onions. And then celery and carrots. Stir those around a little bit. And now we're going to add 2 teaspoons of rosemary. 2 teaspoons of thyme. And as much salt and pepper as you like. I'd say that's about a teaspoon or so. So, we're going to stir all this up. Come over and have a look in the pot, see how it's looking. Stir it all around, get it all mixed. And we're going to keep an eye on this and come back, and I'm going to show you what it looks like in 10 minutes. So, in behind me, the vegetables are now sauteing in the pan, and they're getting nice and soft. And next, we're going to be adding the beef. So, I went to Sobeys, and it was on sale, which is great. And I usually buy 1.5, because I like a lot of meat in my stew. So, right after we put the meat in, we're going to add the rest of our sauce ingredients. So, I use this Kitchen Basics cooking stock. It's beef cooking stock. And it says right on the box, it is gluten-free. So that's a real easy way to know that the things you're cooking with are gluten-free. We're also going to be putting in a can of Hunt's tomato sauce, which I know to be gluten-free. And we're going to use some heirloom balsamic vinegar. You have to be careful with balsamic vinegar because sometimes they have a barley in them and you have to just watch and make sure. And we're also going to be adding some barbecue sauce. And I like this smoky maple barbecue sauce. I think it adds a really nice flavor onto the sauce, onto the stew. Okay, so 10 minutes has gone by and our onions are nice and soft looking. Look. Just want to get the onions and the celery and the carrot just nice and soft. So now we're going to add our beef. And we're going to stir the beef. Spoon's not heavy enough. I need a different spoon. We're going to stir the beef in with the other vegetables. So they're not, pieces of beef are not stuck to one another. There. Looking good. Some of the chunks of beef are quite big. And when I have time, sometimes I cut them into smaller cubes, but not today. So now I'm going to add my basics for my stew. Here's my beef broth. And then we have the tomato sauce. have 1/3 cup of barbecue sauce, which adds a real nice tang. And we're going to add 2 tablespoons of the balsamic vinegar. Oops. Maybe a little more. There we go. So we're going to stir this all together. Put the heat up onto high and get this pot boiling. Okay, so our stew mixture is come to a boil, which is great. We're going to turn the heat down now till about low-mid, and we're going to cover it. We're also going to let this boil for about 45 minutes. So I'm just going to set my timer. And you want to keep an eye on it. The reason you want it to boil for so long is this is what's going to make your beef nice and tender in your stew. So you want to make sure you give it at least 45 minutes. But you do have to keep an eye on the pot. Make sure if it's boiling too fast to put it down on low. And you really want to make sure that the pot doesn't boil over on you. But while that's boiling, we're going to keep an eye, and we're going to stir it probably every 5 minutes or so, just to make sure that everything's not sticking to the bottom or anything like that. But while that's going, we're going to peel our potatoes, and we're going to cut them into bite-sized chunks for the next phase. And we're also going to prepare our cornstarch and milk. So this is what we're going to use to thicken the stew instead of using flour or gluten. So we're going to use a cup of almond fresh, just for those who are lactose, dairy, whatever intolerant. So there's a cup of that. And then I'm going to use a tablespoon of cornstarch in there. This is my high-tech method of how to mix milk and cornstarch. You can think, I'm sure, of 10,000 different ways, but this is how I do it. There. So, in 45 minutes time, we'll come back and we'll add this to the stew. Well, we're almost halfway through our first lot of boiling for the stew. It's looking pretty good. It's coming along. Just want to make sure that you keep an eye on it and stir it up off the bottom, because you don't want it to burn on. But it's on low, and it's bubbling up quite nicely. It's starting to look good. It's starting to smell good. Okay, well, our stew's been boiling for 45 minutes, so now it's time to add the potatoes and the cornstarch and milk mixture. So, I'm going to take off the top. Be careful, it's hot now. It's been boiling for a while. Alright, so we have our cornstarch and milk, and we have our potatoes. So, it's cooking. In go the potatoes. Oof. Stir those up a little bit. A nice full pot of stew. And this is going to thicken up the broth. So I'm going to add my cup of milk mixed with cornstarch plus another cup of milk. So come over and take a look at the pot. Just added. We're going to stir it all in together. You can see the color changing. And that cornstarch and that milk is going to thicken that up really nice. So now we're going to boil this for another at least 30 minutes. So we have to turn the heat back up to get it to boil. But you have to be careful at this point, and you have to watch it carefully, because if this burns to the bottom of the pot, it's going to ruin your stew. So you really have, once it starts to boil, reduce the heat and stir it at least every 5 minutes and keep an eye on it. But I promise you, it'll be worth it. Well, there you have it. The stew is on the stove, and we just have to watch it now and let it boil. So hopefully you've been smelling it in class all day, and I hope you enjoy how delicious the aroma is, and I hope you enjoy the stew. Bon appetit.